All right. It has been a long time since I've updated the Necrobinder tier list, and we had a members only poll on YouTube that decided that this was going to be the next thing that we did out of the characters I haven't updated in a while. Main branch update just happened, so figured this would be a good time to start working on these tier lists again, since the game has changed a lot, and I kind of told myself that after each main branch update, we'd sort of revise if things significantly change, which I definitely have. I think the number one important thing to talk about is just Aeon Glass introduction into the game and the Dorito in Act 2. Those two things warp the game a lot, and so your deck building is going to look very different than it used to look before. I have basically just scrambled these cards here and pulled them down from an old tier list, so there's no particular order necessarily. We're just going to talk about maybe the big things that have changed between now and the last time we did this. I think broadly speaking, just to categorize these tiers before we move on any further, S is like significantly run warping or maybe best in class for what it's trying to do. So best in class would be something like I have like scaling block, or I have like front loaded block, or I have scaling damage or front loaded damage, or I have acceleration, right? If it's like the best card in that category for its category, it's probably just going into S tier. Or if it's picked like every single run, no matter what kind of deck you have, and it's basically never skipped, like 95% plus pick rate, probably S tier. D tier would be like under 5% pick rate. Like if you see it on the screen, you're probably not supposed to pick it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's like completely unplayable trash garbage. There's not that much of that in this game in general, but it may be extremely niche. I think B is just going to be sort of this in between. Ends up in the deck often enough, but is maybe not like an insta slam. You probably just have to think about whether it's good in the deck or not. Probably about a 50-50 coin flip about whether it is, or if it's picked less often but is very good in the positions it's good in, it could end up here as well. A and C is just skewed more towards S and D from that perspective, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily always mean that this is like picked 50% of the time or something. It's just that it's probably about average. Ends up in the deck a decent amount, but not every run. We can maybe clarify that further as we move on of like future cards and whatnot, but and we'll also clarify that this is single player only. I'm not really talking about multiplayer here. We can do that in a different video. This video is brought to you by Boot.dev, an online coding academy that makes learning how to code easy. Not only is coding fun, but it's also just incredibly useful and pays really well. If I wasn't extremely lucky to be making videos and streaming as a job, thanks to you guys, I would 100% be doing comp sci stuff instead. It's been 10 years since I last took coding classes in college, and saying that out loud makes me feel really old. But I did enjoy my time learning how to program, and Boot.dev has made my much-needed refresher very simple. Their interface turns classes into an RPG-like game where you earn experience for completing lessons and get to do exactly what you'll be expected to do at a job, making projects and writing real, useful scripts. Whatever projects you make while completing courses, you can use as a portfolio to show employers when it's time to apply for jobs. And if you're not trying to go into the workforce, but you're just curious about making games, making tools, and those essential mods for existing games, then Boot.dev will be right up your alley. You can use my code in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen for 25% off your annual plan. Thanks so much to Boot.dev for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back to the tier list. First up, we have Debilitate. 1 energy, deal 10 damage, vulnerable and weak, are twice as effective against the enemy for the next 2 turns. This did get nerfed since last time. It used to read 3 upgrades to 4 turns, and now it's 2 upgrade to 3. I think very often the vulnerable portion of this is not really doing a whole lot. I don't think Necro is often scaling damage through vulnerable. Lethality is often a more important card for this character. Not that it's like not good to click Vuln, but the way that Necro really tends to operate is just not trying to click attacks inside the early game because of the way your base deck works. So when you have like Unleash and Summon mechanics in the base deck, removes get really strong, and every attack card you're adding is not blocking, which means your Unleash is doing less and less because you're not storing as much block, right? If you're not drawing into block, you're not going to be overblocking. And that's kind of the main thing that Necro is generally trying to do. In Overgrowth, that is less true than Underdogs, but just in general, that's sort of a game plan that this character has. And a lot of the Vuln keywords are attached to cards that deal damage, right? Putrefy is like a notable exception to this, and that card is just very solid. So when you have that, this can be quite good. I would say you're not really ever picking this to speculate on it. Like, I'm not picking this before weak is in the deck. If it is in the deck and I have consistent weak chain, it is a way to block the end game, and it makes your top end really good. So I'd say it's more niche than before. It used to be much stronger. Weak chain is harder after Defy nerfs. That was a while ago, but it is like kind of difficult to weak chain unless you really have the stuff. So you don't really click it that much inside of Act 1. After that, you're probably going to know when it's good. So for now, we're going to throw this into B tier. It might get adjusted, but I'm going to drop it a little bit from last time. Okay. Hang. 1 energy, deal 10 damage, double the damage all hang cards deal to this enemy. This upgrades to 13 damage. So the difference between something like this and Claw, people love to meme about Claw and how fun it is or whatever, but unfortunately, it's just not very good. The main reason is that Claw doesn't scale exponentially like this, and Hang does, right? So you need like very few card plays to actually get this to do significant damage. And the first Hang is not very good. The second you get another copy or you get ways to replay Hang, it gets very, very absurd. So 2 Hangs in your deck is basically all your damage for the rest of the run that you ever need. And this is also notably a debuff that's applied to the enemy when you do this. So it does proc Sleight of Flash. So that's like a kind of smaller scenario that this is going to be better in. For basically the end game, you really need to think about pushing damage quickly from the beginning of the run. A lot of that comes down to not just picking your like garbage damage cards. Like you don't want to add damage commons because they don't contribute to damage scaling. There's a very big difference of like picking a card that does 15 damage in the early game, like a Defile or something, like 13 damage, 17 damage, whatever it is, and actually working out a way to kill the Aeon Glass or kill test subject quickly, because these fights are the ones that are actually going to kill you for like sitting around in them and not actually killing fast. The early game, most of the time, with exceptions in Overgrowth, you don't actually need to kill that fast. Necro can often scale damage with Unleashing just by blocking, but this is something that does kill bosses, and that is something that Necro tends to struggle doing if you're building your deck to be good in hallways, which means you're just adding block cards. So I think Hang is better than it was before. I'm not going to put it in S tier because it's not auto-clicked, but I think we're just going to drop it into A tier for sure here. Gets in fairly frequently as a damage solve. If you have other ways of solving damage, it's not always clicked. So just think about whether or not you need scaling damage. It's not terrible upfront damage either. Like 10 or 13 damage is not like the worst rate of all time, but the real thing it's good at is just killing bosses. Okay. Next up, Danse Macabre. 1 energy power. Whenever you play a card that costs 2 energy or more, gain 4 block. This upgrades to 6. Very, very strong card. This is one of the premium block engines on this character, and now that borrowed time has been changed to increase the cost of your cards, if you get these 2 cards, this is just like completely solving block, essentially. Every time you play borrowed time, everything in your hand is just blocking for 6, and that's disgusting. Even if it's only blocking 6 a turn, still a really significant number, and Necro has a lot of cards that really benefit from this. One that I can think of off the top of my head is just Deathbringer. That's very powerful. And a lot of these 2-cost block cards are also very, very strong that we'll get to later. So Danse Macabre just sort of gets in. Can even be picked speculatively if you are strong in the early game. I will say, in general, though, that Necro just really wants the early game to go well. If you can have relic support and be able to kill elites inside of Act 1, usually you're going to be okay. So I wouldn't pick too much speculative stuff inside of Act 1 unless you're already pretty strong. You're just going to make your early game worse, and that is Necro's like biggest downfall, is the early game can often be kind of bad. So it will be S tier, but notable exceptions in early game if you don't have anything that works with it, or you're just kind of weaker. You can't really justify adding it in that case. Okay, next up, Undeath. 0 energy, gain 7 block, add a copy of this card into your discard pile. Necro, again, just really loves overblocking and kind of scaling with block, and also has a lot of runs that we kind of coin like power slop runs, where you sort of just want to put all your powers into play and then you win. And Undeath is exactly the kind of card that you want in these sorts of runs. If you're doing a looping deck where you're trying to play your Unleash like a bunch of times, or you're trying to play like a core card a bunch of times, in general, Undeath can bloat the deck and make it not good at doing that. But in general, this card is just sort of picked always inside of Act 1 and usually gets in even later. If you solve front load block and have maybe some relic support, it's not going to be that strong for you. But if you have problems putting your powers into play and notice you're taking chip in the first couple turns of the fight, this can often just be picked, and then maybe you just don't play it after the first play. But being able to play a card that says just like 7 blocks, 0 energy is really, really good when you have a lot of expensive cards that you're playing, or have cards that have delayed value for next turn, like Invoke or something. So you can play like Undeath into Invoke, and then your next turn's really good, etc. Necro just has a lot of these kinds of setup cards that really need time bought for you. Even something like Friendship doesn't do anything the turn you play it, but then after that, you're kind of stabilizing. So again, lets you sort of put these things in play. I don't think it's always picked, so probably just A tier here. But yeah, very, very solid card. Okay, next up, Shroud. 1 energy. Whenever you apply Doom, gain 2 block. This upgrades to 3. I just had a run like this earlier today where I had Countdown plus Shroud. And this turns into just like gain 3 block a turn, which sounds kind of bad until you realize what that actually is. Like if you're thinking about what a defend is 1 energy, 1 draw, block 5, with some ways to get better, but that's generally what it is. Shroud is kind of just like playing a little bit over half of energy worth of block every turn, if you're still drawing defends and playing them. So that is quite good, and can work the turn you play it as well. And notably, I think also works with multi-enemy fights. So if you play Shroud and then play like a Deathbringer, or play, I'm forgetting the name of it, but the common card that blocks for 5 and deals 7 Doom or whatever, you're getting multiple things out of that. So in those fights, it can be even better. And I think even in like the single target fights is still quite solid. Any long fight, this is just going to help your top end. And Necro generally likes having top end in the deck because it lets you stabilize. So you generally need to start thinking about scaling early on this character than a lot of others, and I don't mind this card. I don't think it's like insane or anything. I'm just going to drop this in B over Debilitate, but yeah, it's not crazy. It's just enough of block sometimes that it's worth playing and gets in the deck often enough. If you can like dupe pot it in a fight, that can often be enough to just sort of stabilize and sort of like answer the Knowledge Demon's debuff or something. Passive block like this is also very good into like Dorito and also good into Aeon Glass. Anything that blocks without having to play cards is nice in those fights since you don't scale the enemy, and powers don't activate the Dorito either. Okay, next up we have Reap. 3 energy attack, retain, deal 27 damage. This upgrades to 33. One of the main reasons why this gets in is that you see an early lethality. Having a big attack to play with lethality is really nice and does do a lot of stuff in the early game. When it's no longer good and you don't want to be playing it, you just hold it in your hand and you shuffle it out every deck cycle and you never have to redraw it. And that's one of the main things that's really appealing about this. Also works with Danse Macabre, also works well with Borrowed Time. Anything that's like expensive with Borrowed Time is nice since you're playing less card plays but still getting like high value out of it. Reap is sort of just falling into this category of like generically kind of okay early, falls off a cliff later, but does not fall off as bad as other attacks. So I'm going to throw this into B tier. This is like early game pickup only, often in Overgrowth, but can also one-shot an eel, and that's a really difficult fight for Necro. That's probably the hardest thing in the underdogs, aside from the bosses maybe. And most of the bosses are not even that hard, but it's a singular fight. That's probably the hardest fight inside of the act, and also like Overgrowth, it one-shots a Frog Parasite spawn, so that's really nice as well. And that fight's also very difficult. So these two fights that Necro kind of struggles with a lot, Reap is performing really well into. I will say the second that you feel like you don't need to pick this, you never want to pick it. I'm not adding Reap into my deck for later. It's a now card. So once now is solved, it's never getting in. Okay. Next up, Fetch. 0 energy, attack, Aussie deals 3 damage. If this is the first time this card has been played this turn, draw 1 card. Notably, this does not work if Austin is not alive. I learned that the hard way, playing this in like a cross-class combination. You would think that the second line of text would still function even if Austin is not alive, but yeah, if you don't have Austin, it doesn't draw. Not that relevant on Necro often, but can matter. This is usually just free damage, and there's some synergies that work with Austin attacks, like Calcify, that do get in the deck, and also like Sick'em. So Fetch can sort of bridge you into this, also as a decent clone target, not that that's like often what I'm thinking about when I'm picking this, but yeah, if you clone Fetch and play Fetch like a million times, you will just like sort of win. So Fetch is just free damage most of the time with a slight punish in Aeon Glass because it's not really doing very much for you there. But other than that, probably just always enters the deck. I think we just put this in like top of A tier. It's not run warping usually, but it is quite good. Next up, Death's Door. 1 energy, skill, gain 6 block. If you apply Doom this turn, gain block 2 additional times. This does work with Neurosurge. So applying Doom to yourself still works with this. I think most people know that by now, but in case you didn't, there you go. If this is constantly activating every turn, it's very good scaling block. 1 energy to block 18 is quite powerful and notably scales multiple times with enchantments and decks. So if you have like a Smooth Stone, which is pretty common to have, or you have Nimble on this or Fresnel Lens and you have that, I think it still is Nimble, but yeah, very, very strong. Just very, very efficient block when it's consistently proccing. If you're not consistently proccing it, probably not worth speculating on, probably not that insane. But is like one of the first block cards you can really pick that's going to get you above curve in a run. And that is very important for Necro. Like the second you slip below curve on this character, your damage goes into the gutter because you're no longer able to store block for Osti, and then Osti doesn't convert damage into Unleash. So very important concept for Necro to just be able to overblock and outpace the enemy. And a lot of enemies don't allow you to outpace them without some big block card like this. So this isn't absurd in very good cases. I would say that the Laurel case is not very good. Like the floor of 6 block is not very good, but it is a card that gets in very frequently, especially if you have something like Countdown, which gets inside the deck inside of Act 1 pretty often. So I'm going to throw this in B tier. It's above Reap probably. It's not insane, but just very solid card and very good in the right situations. Okay, next up, Grave Warden. 1 energy, common, gain 8 block, add a soul into your draw pile. This upgrades to 11 block, which is not disgusting. It used to upgrade to Soul Plus a very long time ago, but even without that, this is essentially a card that just says like gain 8 block, draw 1 later. That's very, very powerful. And the block number on it is starting to get into the amount where you're able to overblock like early game hallways. As a common card, this is seen really frequently and just gets in. I don't think I've not clicked the first copy of Grave Warden inside of like Act 1 ever, really. Feels very strong every time you pick it. And souls do actually contribute for a lot of things later, even though they're kind of nerfed for Dorito and Aeon Glass. Adding 1 soul does not often brick you like some other cards can. It's still very powerful. I think this is just going in A tier under Undeath here. It gets in more often than Death Door, like almost always. Just a really solid early game card, not much has changed there. Okay, next up, Bone Shards. 1 energy, if Osti is alive, he deals 9 damage to all enemies and you gain 9 block, Osti dies. This does upgrade to 12 and 12. So the upgrade is insane. You get like 6 points of value out of it, which is just disgusting. Most upgrades are 3 or 4. So it's a very overstated upgrade. And I think notably the most important thing is that it's a very powerful early game card. And again, a card that lets you overblock. If you play Bone Shards into a summon card, that is generally the best case scenario. Say Osti's on 1 HP, and you play Bone Shards and you summon, you've only lost 1 Osti HP to trade off for like this very overstated 12 and 12 card. That's just absurd. It does reach a point in fights, often bosses or long fights, where you will play Bone Shards once to stabilize, then never play Bone Shards again. So there is something to be said about that, is that you're not going to be playing this in long fights the entire time. But very often inside of these long fights, even the early parts of it, you play this just to generate the block. It's just going to be positive. So yeah, very powerful. I think I'm just throwing this in S tier here. For how much it carries your early game, if you have like a remove to start and then click Bone Shards, you can essentially just click nothing else for the rest of the act, except for the good cards. So you can just skip very aggressively because this card is so overstated. And there's stuff that works with Osti dying. We'll get to that, but not super frequent that comes up. There's a few cases for that. Okay, next, Deathbringer. 2 energy, apply 21 Doom and 1 weak to all enemies. This is pretty similar to Bone Shards, in that it's just a very overstated card. Like 21 Doom is a very large number attached to 1 weak, so you can basically think of this as damage and block in the same card, and the number is just really big. Weakness is insane. It strips 2 artifacts off of Aeon Glass. That's very, very good, and often is just going to help with a lot of your problems. Like all the Act 2 hallways with multiple enemies are generally pretty problematic for Necro. The elites, the... what is it called? I like actually only know the nicknames. Oh, Decimillipedes. Yeah, the Decimillipedes this really helps in. Also in the Cockroaches of Evil. This is basically ending the entire fight. It helps inside of Act 1 a lot for all the AoE fights as well. Just an absurd card and doesn't really ever fall off. Works well with Danse Macabre. Works well with anything else that like Shroud or some relics like Intimidating Helmet or whatever that apply and work off of these 2 cost or work off of debuffs being applied. Works double with Sleight of Flesh. Really, really crazy. So yeah. This is S tier for me. I think this has just gone up, and it pushes fights to a conclusion and is often worth playing. Like, you're going to make the concessions to take some damage to play this just because of how much progress it makes in the fight. Just really, really solid. Okay, next we have Borrowed Time, 1 energy, skill, gain 4 energy, cards cost an additional 1 energy this turn. Like I mentioned earlier, this has some cool synergies with other cards. So if you have Danse Macabre, this is just turning every card in your hand into a block card. Other than that, I think Necro has a really big use for energy, or burst energy specifically, for playing powers. If you cannot use the energy on that turn, way less good. but Necro often can. This character is very strange in that it wants a lot of energy, but doesn't really pick any draw cards. Like, burst draw on Necro often feels really bad because it costs energy and then you can't play your powers. So that's why stuff like Souls, where they technically don't draw the turn you play them, like the cards that generate them, you usually add them to your draw pile and then you play them the turn after, are often better than burst draw like Parse. And that's really weird, I think, for a lot of people to understand, because a lot of people want burst draw most of the time. It just doesn't end up actually being better. This does work with something like Dredge really well, but that's not super common to uncommon specifically in the same deck. But yeah, has some really cool interactions. I would say is one of the better energy generators, and I like this a lot more after it was changed into this format rather than the one that I think was in the old tier list. I'm gonna throw this into like bottom of A for now. We might drop it. I'm not sure if I'm overrating right now, but if you need any sort of energy generation at all, this is a premium one. It upgrades to 6 energy generated. And if you're playing very expensive stuff after this, so you're playing cards that cost 2 or 3, this is just a very efficient card. Basically, you don't want to be playing 0 or 1 cost cards as much as you can. It's obviously fine to play like the 1 cost cards that turn into 2 cost, but just in terms of raw value generated, going from 3 to 4 or 2 to 3 is a much better percentage than going from 1 to 2 or 0 to 1, right? So yeah, definitely A tier. S tier with Danse, yeah, but definitely you need some stuff to make it really broken. Ice Cream is a very good shout. That's a very strong interaction as well. Next up, we have the Scythe. 2 cost, deal 13 damage, permanently increases card's damage by 4, exhaust. This was buffed recently from 3 to 4. Now it upgrades from 4 to 5, and is generally just a really strong card if you see it early. If you see it with Call of the Void, you can actually stall infinitely to get replay on this a bunch of times, which is not my favorite thing ever, but technically you can make this infinite and then you just win the run. So if you have Call of the Void in the deck, unless it's been patched out by the time this releases, which I don't think it will be, but it's a very cringe way to win the run, but is extremely powerful. So be on the lookout for that, I guess, if you just want to sweat super hard. Otherwise, it's pretty much an early game card only. I think I'm going to drop this from where I had it last time, since I don't think I'm really picking this like end of Act 1, which is where you're most likely to see it. Let's go ahead and throw this into B tier. It just is a little too conditional, I think, of when you play, but not like too conditional to the point that it's never getting in. It just needs to be seen early. If you transform into it, it's pretty sick. Works with Danse Macabre. That's not really why you care about it. It's just if this is reading deal 30, 40, 50 damage and you have lethality or whatever, that can just be one-shotting fights. So, okay. Next up, Invoke. 1 energy, next turn, summon 2, gain 2 energy. Another energy generating card, and like I said with Necro, a lot of these like nest turn effects are kind of good. If you just don't have energy and you're struggling to play your powers, this is going to get you there. And it does actually block next turn with the summon condition. It upgrades to summon 3, gain 3 energy. The summon keyword is like just a little bit of icing on the cake. It doesn't matter too much. This is essentially just better outmaneuver. I think outmaneuver is actually in the trash heap. I've just never really seen it, but it's generally just better outmaneuver. I think it's pretty good. Probably not as good as Borrowed Time. Generally, Borrowed Time is just better than this. I think we're going to throw this like top of B tier. It gets in enough. You kind of just need a critical mass of energy generation in Necro decks often, and it's contributing to that if you need it. It's just not best in slot. Okay. Next, we have End of Days, 3 energy, apply 29 Doom to all enemies, kill enemies with at least as much Doom as HP. I think a lot of people complain about Doom not killing the turn that it is supposed to be lethal, I guess, and this fixes that problem. Also, a very strong like Shrimp target or Replay target or Dupe Pot target, anything like that. Deals with a lot of the problem fights I was talking about earlier with Deathbringer to just kill them inside of Act 2 and Act 1. So early game, very, very strong. I think later in the game obviously falls off a lot since it's not literally killing the enemy when you play it. Then in bosses, you're just not getting the weakness and it costs more. So this is not really as good as Deathbringer, I don't think, even though that killing the enemies line is cool. It's really fun design and I like this card a lot, but it's just not as powerful. It's pretty strong early and then falls off. Nice inside of early Act 2 and solves Decimillipedes. So yeah, we'll throw it in like bottom of A tier for now. Really, really powerful snowball card if you can get it early, but generally you're not seeing it early as a rare card and just doesn't do as much as Deathbringer in the end game. Okay, No Escape. 1 energy skill, apply 10 Doom plus an additional 5 Doom for every 10 Doom on the enemy. This is kind of a weird card. As a solo damage solve, it's a little too slow. Like, if you have no other things working with this, it's not going to really do anything fast enough to kill the bosses. Like, the reason why you're picking this is to kill fights with a lot of HP, right? That is clearly the only reason for it. It will kill the bosses, but it needs generally a little bit of support in order to actually start doing a lot. The upgrade, I believe, is just 15 Doom and no additional like bonuses after that. It's just a flat buff to it, which helps if you don't have much support. But yeah, generally, you're not playing this like a ton of times. You can play this probably like twice. And the goal is to have the enemy die after that. But if you're going like 3, 4, 5 deck cycles, you know, you're probably winning already. Unless your deck is really tiny. Generally, I just want something else before this, or I'm really desperate to kill the boss. But I think I'm down on this card a little bit since the last time I made a tier list. Against Aeon Glass, there's just a lot of work that needs to be done. Hopefully you have thought about that and have put more Doom, maybe some countdowns, maybe Deathbringers in your deck, and then this card's going to pop off. If you have Dupe Pot or Liquid Memories, it gets a lot better. If you have ways to play it multiple times, even if it's just for one fight, usually that's just a way of killing a really difficult fight. And on this character, I am thinking about Aeon Glass. Pretty much every character I'm thinking about Aeon Glass at the beginning of the run. That's just like a very important thing to consider throughout. So I'm going to throw this like top of B here. I think it is not quite as universal as some of these other things. Can't get in the deck as often, but when it does, it is very powerful. So in the right situations can be easily S tier, just not that frequent that it is. Next up, we have Friendship. 1 energy, power, lose 2 strength, gain energy at the start of each turn. This is easily S tier. Probably one of the best cards we talked about, if not the best. Maybe one of the best in the character. The lose 2 strength key is just like not a downside at all. You're never really using strength to scale damage on this character. Even if you are like using lethality, you're playing some big attack like a Scythe or Reap or whatever next to it, and -2 strength on those attacks just doesn't matter. The upgrade is just never needed. It upgrades to lose 1 strength instead of 2, but like I said, you're usually just removing all your strikes and not playing those in the first place. So really, really strong. Probably should be nerfed, to be honest. This is just like a disgusting card that just always enters this deck, even inside of early game. And like I mentioned earlier, being able to overblock on this character is really important. When you have extra energy, it becomes a lot easier to overblock. And that is something I really value. Okay, next up, Severance, 2 energy, deal 13 damage, add a soul into your draw pile, hand, and discard pile. This card is weird. It doesn't really do enough damage to justify the energy cost necessarily on its own. There's a lot of ways if you just want to deal damage at a better rate than this. It does say kind of draw 3 on it. It's just that Necro doesn't really love drawing after playing 2 energy worth of stuff on Severance. I think if you have like a lot of energy, you can pick this, but often that's not really the case. I'm usually struggling to find the energy, and when I do, then I'm happy because I'm playing my other cards in the deck. This can be an early game pickup. Like, the damage is significant enough inside of early game, and if you're really desperate for souls, maybe you have a Haunt and you have like a Capture Spirit, then you can pick this and that'll sort of give you enough damage to kill the boss. There's some Desperation picks where it gets in. I don't think it's very frequent. So for me, this is sort of just C tier. I think Zeknar said he likes this card more than Reap, but that's not saying a whole lot for him. I don't think he's very high on Reap. I just feel kind of okay about both of these. This feels very middling to me. Maybe some people like it a lot, but I just don't feel great about it. Okay, next up, Melancholy. 3 energy skill, gain 13 block, reduces card's cost by 1 energy whenever anyone dies. Mostly this is just applying when Osti dies. And you can do that by playing something like Bone Shards and then killing Osti and then reducing the cost of Melancholy. And that plays in the same hand. So good combo with that. And again, another card that in long fights, if you can play this for like 1 or 0 energy, will eventually just turn into you outpacing the fight and winning. The block number is big enough on it that will convert into a very meaningful amount of output. And the upgrade is significance. 4 block goes to 17. That's a very, very big number. I think unless you have these sorts of synergies, or unless you are literally like having Osti die normally because you just can't outpace the enemy, that it's not very good. Like, if you're slightly above curve and don't have like Bone Shards or something like that and aren't losing Osti all the time, you're not going to play this for 3 energy. You really don't want to do that. Does work with Danse Macabre at like 2 energy or 3 energy, and that's really solid enough. Intimidating Helmet, these are solid enough to push it into pickable even if your Osti's not dying a lot or you don't have Bone Shards or whatever. But yeah, generally this is a situational card that can be very strong in the right circumstances, but is usually pretty average. Will bail you out of a bad run. I think that's something worth noting, is that in a bad run, this is very good because you are definitely losing your Osti in a bad run. If you need to outpace, it's just going to help you a lot. So I think this is B tier easily for me. Not the most frequent thing in the deck ever, but enough to justify a spot here. Okay, next up, Shared Fate, 0 energy, lose 2 strength, enemy loses 2 strength, exhaust. Very, very powerful to do this. Like I said earlier on Friendship, the lose 2 strength to yourself debuff is not really relevant. Into Aeon Glass has a multi-attack and also just scale strength, and you need to play energy on Withers and like exhausting those somehow, right? Or just blocking a lot. I don't really want to be spending more energy to block over the course of the fight. Like, I think Shared Fate just blocking over the entire fight is super, super nice. And you can spend energy on then doing other things and doing damage. So it's one of those things that contributes really well to this character's output, because once you actually can overblock and have enough energy to block, you can spend the energy on other stuff. And that can be stuff like draw, like making souls that are otherwise kind of hard to play, or just doing damage in general, or keeping debuffs on the enemy, like playing a Defy that doesn't actually block that much for you, but like sustains weak on the enemy, like things like that, right? Stuff that's like luxury plays, this just opens up and lets you outpace the enemy. This is like easily S tier for me. Also deals with like the Ensomancer, and the Dorito in Act 2 is a huge use case for this. The scariest turn in that fight is often the multi-hit, and this is dealing with that quite a lot. The upgrade is quite good. It goes to enemy loses 3 strength, which is essentially just neutering that fight, especially if you have weakness on it. It will basically just be doing nothing to you. And Necro often has a very difficult time in that fight, since you're usually playing very skill-heavy decks in terms of your block and your damage. So it's very rough to deal with that fight otherwise, and basically in every single hard fight, this is just doing way too much for essentially free. The downside is just nothing. Okay. Next up, Flatten, 2 energy, Alcide deals 12 damage. This card costs 0 energy if Alcide has attacked this turn. This feels like it should work if your deck is like small and you're playing some like looping stuff. It just never feels like it actually works. Like, I never really get this with Unleash, and oftentimes it's just breaking my block, and that feels way worse. So I think this is just going into C tier for me. It's not a super exciting card. If you transform into it, it gets better, because 1 transforms are going to mean that your deck is smaller and you're lining this up more often. If you have like Fetch from early game, like maybe you see Fetch on floor 1 and then turn 2, this is like landing pretty good, but usually not. You kind of need some transforms and additional help to want to pick it. It's just sort of desperate damage in early game. Okay, next up, pull aggro, 2 energy skill, summon 4, gain 7 block. This sort of reads like just 2 energy block 11. The thing about Necro is you have this Danse Macabre cards and Borrowed Time and other things that make this better. The 2 words on it are very strong. Like anything that says summon on this character is really nice, because if you are overblocking, this is just turning that into actual scaling throughout the fight, which is powerful. It's not an exceptional card almost ever. If you have these situational things, or if you have Fernell Lens or whatever, if you have anything that makes it a little bit better, it's generally enough to justify it. I think the output number is quite awkward. Like 11 is just not big enough to want to like raw pick it all the time. But as a first block card, if you have like nothing else, or if you have any synergies with it, probably pretty strong. It's just going to go in B tier for me. I think that's just like the definition of just sort of like a middle of the road card, is like it's strong sometimes and weak other times. Like it's just not very exciting. It's like very clear when it is one of those things or not. If you change any of the numbers on this, I think it gets a little bit too powerful. Like even 1 more block or 1 more summon is just like really, really strong at that point. But it's at this like perfect break point of just like not necessarily enough to outpace enemy, because often like if I draw pull aggro in a hand with like a defend plus a Grave Warden, then Grave Warden defend is just better. Unless I'm like overblocking, right? You kind of need to overblock for this to be good, and it's not really a card that contributes to overblocking, which is sort of the issue. So it needs a little bit of help to actually get over that hump, which I think is the main problem with it. Next, we have Neurosurge, 0 energy power, gain 3 energy, draw 2 cards at the start of your turn, apply 3 doom to yourself. Like I mentioned earlier, this does work with some other pieces like Deathbringer. Really, really powerful acceleration. Often the downside on this of the 3 doom to yourself just never applies. If it's not killing you, it literally doesn't do anything, and it can often be an upside. You do have to be a little bit careful in longer fights, or if you are low HP in like a hallway or something, but often this is just a card that I play and then I immediately win the fight. I essentially just get to play a second extra turn, and has a lot of synergies with any relics that do something when you play powers. I literally just had a run that I played like Game Piece plus Permafrost, and this card is now drawing 3, giving 3 energy, and blocking 7. Like, that's a really absurd card, right? Notably not a good clone target, because you will like die immediately unless you have a way to end the fight right away. And you don't really want to play multiple copies of this very often unless you can end like, again, immediately. But yeah, very easily S tier. I think it's going to go under Friendship for me since I care about the longer fights a little bit, and it's also a rare card, so I'm going to bump down a tiny bit. But yeah, Neurosurge, like, just undoubtedly an extremely powerful card. If you're reading this and worried about the downside, don't be. Next up, Sacrifice. 1 energy skill, retain. If Aussie is alive, he dies, and you gain block equal to double his max HP. Upgrade to 0 energy. The retain is very good on it, but I would say that it's not that often that your Aussie is like 15 max HP and he's living on 1, which is where this card is like going to be its best, right? When your Aussie is low HP, has high max HP, oftentimes it just doesn't happen. I think it's usually very difficult, and your main way of scaling Aussie HP is usually just your base cards. You're usually just like summoning 7 from your base deck, which you are going to upgrade your starter card quite a lot. But that usually means that you're not getting a ton of value out of this. Like, I think you kind of need more than like 9 or 10 Austie HP for this to be really relevant, and usually just not picked over other rare cards. Feels a little strange. If you have like a big Dirge or something, usually it's just enough and you don't need to actually like convert that into block. Like, I'd rather just play like Spur and heal Austie at that point. Just a little too weird, I think. This is probably just like C tier for me. It doesn't get picked very often, but probably more than these like kind of weird damage cards. All right. Scourge. Scourge? I don't know how to say this. I feel like people made fun of my pronunciation and do that a lot, so we'll just maybe say it wrong and they'll be mad. 1 energy, apply 13 Doom, draw 1 card. Does have synergies with some of the Doom application stuff. The upgrade goes to 2 cards and 16 Doom, I believe. So a pretty powerful upgrade, and can be enough to like play a No Escape, right? This can be like your one thing that you have in the deck, and then No Escape gets better. If you're really desperate for damage, then this can get in. There are some times that Doom is not as good as actual damage, but most of the time it's roughly comparable. I would say that the main thing that I think about would be like fights that respawn guys, like the Decimillipedes, or the deer in Act 1, the boss, Ceremonial Beast. Essentially, you need to phase it and go to like under 180 HP, or the fight is very hard. And Doom doesn't do that. So it's a little weird. I think the draw effect is just generally not very good on this character. Like, draw is good generally, but playing energy to draw on a character that's so energy hungry feels really weird. You can generally scale in other ways with your card draw. Either you make souls and play them on a turn where you have excess energy, or you have something like Domain that is drawing every turn passively. That sort of stuff is really strong. This doesn't feel quite as good to me. This is just sort of like a weird damage comment. I think we're throwing this in like top of C tier. It gets in enough, but just not quite impactful enough, I don't think. Next, countdown, 1 energy, power. At the start of your turn, apply 6 Doom to a random enemy. This is probably roughly the same as where I had it on my last tier list, but in general, I think this is a card that people sleep on a lot. Again, the run I literally just played was 3 countdown pluses to solve the game. That does happen. This is just something I want to pick early game because it's damage while I'm allowed to spend all my energy on block, which allows me to outpace and actually make progress in a fight. It's often very hard, like for example, in the statue fight in Act 1, to play 3 blocks a turn and make progress, right? Even if you have like Fasten or something, you can play 3 defense a turn, but you're not going to go anywhere with that, and eventually you're going to just break and die. You don't really make progress unless you are either generating extra energy or have something like this that is doing damage passively. So it's not like the best in slot for doing something like that. I could rather rely on something like Friendship and play better cards. But as far as this goes, like doing 6 or 9 damage a turn is good enough. I think this is just B tier, like top of B, as a way to get any sort of synergy scaling. Can be really good with No Escape, for example, can be really, really good with Death's Door. And it's really easy to just pick this as a first copy since it's not really bricking you. Like you play it, you never redraw it, and then you're just drawing into blocks, and that is quite nice. Next, Oblivion, 0 energy skill. Whenever you play a card this turn, apply 3 Doom to the enemy. This notably does apply a debuff on the enemy, so it does proc Sleight of Flesh, and then every single instance of Doom after that is also proccing Sleight of Flesh. I would say that that is by far the strongest use case for this card, is just with Sleight. Other than that, it's not that strong. You're not usually spamming a ton of cards. If you have like a bunch of souls or something, probably there's something better to do than like 3 damage per soul or whatever. Can block a lot with Shroud. So there's some niche use cases and some things that are like really cool with it. But I think you sort of need those things for it to be really popping off. As a rare, it feels a little underwhelming. I still think it's probably just B tier. I think Sleight of Flesh is probably just getting in the deck whenever you see it. That card is just really, really important for how Necro wants to solve the endgame now. And that is speaking, I think, to bump this card up more than anything. If Sleight is like always in the deck every time you see it, which is probably like over half of runs, then Oblivion also just gets in after that as just a way to deal a ton of damage. And also strips artifact for 0 energy. How bad could it be, right? Like, we need to deal with the artifacts on Aeon Glass somehow to apply weak on it, and it's very, very solid. Okay. Lethality, 1 energy, ethereal power. The first attack each turn deals 50% additional damage. This upgrades to 75%. Is one of the main reasons why Friendship, is not literally 0 downside, but it's still not that impactful and still works with Aussie attacks. Like, if you're debuffing your strength but still playing Aussie attacks like Unleash, this is still working. And it does mean that you convert this like 1 attack per deck cycle that you're trying to loop into something that actually kills the enemy on site, which is very powerful. Or your Bone Shards is now doing like 20 plus damage, right? Enough to actually like end a fight. Reap is doing a lot of damage as well with this. Just very, very powerful. Necro often has these like huge interactions with like big cards. It works really well with something like Reaper Form that's going to essentially double the damage of the card. So you have any multiplicative scaling together and you're getting more value out of it, of course. Really makes these like retain damage commons on Necro like So and Reap a lot better. And hits a lot of breakpoints, I think, that are really important. This is also just very good boss scaling. Works with some powers that are really interesting. I've had like Lethality prep time be like a main way that I scale and solve damage. That's very cool. So performs really, really well. This is something that just gets inside the deck like as soon as you see it early until you have damage sorted or you like know that it's just going to be a brick. But like 95% of situations, I think this is just an excellent, excellent card. This is just going in S tier very easily. Next up, Devour Life, 1 energy power. Whenever you play a soul, summon 1. This upgrade is basically needed for this card to feel good. It goes to summon 2. I think the main thing with this card is that 1, now since last time, Dredge exhausts. And also souls are just kind of worse. Like, I don't really want to be relying on souls as like a main way that I do stuff just because of Aeon Glass's existence and Dorito. These 2 fights alone sort of bump this down. And I think eating an upgrade as well as just not being like that good of a payoff is just not really worth it. Like, you really need to be playing a lot of souls for this to be good. You need some Capture Spirit or something else, and it needs the upgrade. If you have these things, like if Capture Spirit's in the deck, it's probably going to be pretty strong, but these cards are just getting in the deck less often now. And you're not really stacking a bunch of soul generation all into one deck. So not going to be as impactful as it used to be. I don't think it's terrible in these spots, but it is more uncommon that it is very good. In the spots it's good, it's very good, but in the average run, it's usually a do-nothing power, and I think that just puts it into like top of C, probably. Okay. Next, we have Dredge. 1 energy skill. Put 3 cards from your discard pile into your hand. Exhaust. The upgrade makes this retain, which is a very, very powerful upgrade for a draw order reliant card like this. There's a couple of interactions with this that are really good. You can pull back energy gen, you can pull back powers you missed, you can pull back like Undeath copies, you can pull back like Oblivion or whatever and play it, like these 0 cost things. Maybe you're looping a Bone Shards, whatever. There's a lot of things that you can do with this that make it cool. Pull back Hang, pull back Enfeebling Touch on the right turn, right? Pull back your retain cards. Like, draw manipulation is good, but I think it's very hard to justify something like this. Again, Necro doesn't like spending energy on a card like this. It is like the best of its kind, and the upgrade is very solid. So if you see this just green randomly inside of Act 2 or 3 or whatever, then it's going to be quite good for you, probably. But yeah, it's not frequent that it gets in the deck. When it does, it's very, very good. So I think we can throw this at like bottom of B. It's definitely better than a lot of these things in C tier, or basically all of them. So I feel comfortable putting it here. But I would say don't overrate this. You really need to think about your energy economy on this character, and this is putting some pressure on that. If you have energy generation, like you have a borrowed time, you can dredge into borrowed time. But I think the upgrade makes dredge significantly better. Retain is just one of the best keywords in the entire game, and that's something to think about here. Okay, so 1 energy, retain, deal 8 damage to all enemies. Again, Necro struggles a lot with AoE encounters, especially early game, and this is a card that when it falls off, you just hold it in your hand and you retain it and you never play it or redraw it into again. That is saying a lot. Like, Necro really wants future draw cycles and looping decks to work, and this is not interfering with those decks in the slightest. So This is one of those damage commons that just sort of gets picked early game if you see it. Even when it falls off, doesn't fall off super hard. Feels like it gets into the deck more often than Reap for me, just because of the problems it solves. And hits a lot of breakpoints, like playing 2 of these upgraded will kill the spawns and frog parasite, and does well into the cockroaches inside of Act 2. And those fights are just really terrifying for this character. So yeah, I think we throw this into B tier, kind of towards the top. It's just a good damage common. Having good commons on a character is pretty important, since you're going to have reliable access to them. And if they solve problems for you that happen every run, then it's going to just get into the deck. Next, we have Enfeebling Touch. Skill, 1 energy, ethereal, enemy loses 8 strength this turn. I literally just played this to block like 45 for 1 energy in Queen, and in Test Subject it's blocking for, similar amounts. So pretty broken card. This is just, again, a front-loaded block card that scales still into the game and never really falls off. Works with Sleight of Flesh, just blocks way too much for 1 energy. Even in the cases where it's only blocking the 8, that's still a good block card. It has ethereal synergies as well. There's a lot of things on this character that work with ethereal cards, Banshee's Cry being notably one of them, or the power that blocks whenever you play ethereal cards. This is just easily S tier. One of the best front-loaded block cards. Piercing Wail and Silent is just a disgusting card. This is just Piercing Wail, but a little bit different. And yeah, that's still just completely busted. Next up, Reaper Form. 3 energy. Whenever attacks deal damage, apply that much Doom power. Necro really needs to solve endgame damage. And this card essentially reads double your damage if you're doing attacks, and also works with a lot of stuff. Like you have powers like Shroud that whenever you apply Doom, you're blocking. You have cards that allow you to play high cost powers and block for you, like Danse Macabre. You have so much that this is playing with, and it just really works with everything, like Lethality, any attack at all, Eradicate, like any big attacks, really. This is just solving all damage entirely. It's very expensive to play, but in the fights that you need to play it, you are willing to pay the life to get it into play, because the problem is not losing HP, it is being unable to actually kill the enemy before they kill you outright from full. Angloss will do that, Test Subject will do that. If you really need some sort of damage, this is probably one of the best things you can possibly see. It's just going to be worth playing. And again, why the energy economy on this character is so important, because these sorts of powers do need to get into play very often. But this is just easily S tier for me. Probably less often than a lot of these like block powers, I would say, or just very easy to jam into every sort of deck, because Reaper Form is not working in literally every deck, but the decks that it does work in, it's like essentially solving the run for you. Can basically just read like, double hang already at the start. If that's your damage, double Scythe damage, double whatever like big damage thing you need. Works with no escape to help scale that. Yeah, just disgusting card. Okay. Drain power, 1 energy attack, deal 10 damage, upgrade 2 random cards in your discard pile. This is a desperation pick inside of Act 1 to win long fights. If you have no way of scaling, this is going to scale you. And the upgrade goes to 3 random cards and increases the damage slightly, but the main line of text on this is the upgrade cards in your discard pile. If you upgrade blocks, that is allowing you to outpace a lot of fights, especially inside of Act 1. So I never really want to add this, but it does get into the deck often enough, I think. This is probably top of C, bottom of B. I could definitely see it over like Debilitate or something. It's just enough and solve some problems that you have. Again, Act 1 is like the scariest part of the run most of the time for Necro, and this is at its best there, and basically a 1-card solve for long fights lets you outpace a lot of things. Even just hitting upgraded strikes is going to be enough, or it can hit really important stuff like your upgraded bodyguard, upgraded energy on some powers or whatever that you like couldn't play. Pretty solid at doing what it needs to do. Outside of early game, essentially never picked, but yeah, maybe for that reason, top of C, but it is doing a job. Next, we have Poke, 0 energy attack, also deals 6 damage. This is not particularly exciting. I would say that the one thing that this does well is works with Calcify, which is something you do get often enough. As like a first attack, this is also allowing you to block and deal damage at the same time, which is not in the starter deck. For that reason alone, it can be doing stuff and allows you to make progress while not taking a bunch of chip damage. It has some synergies, like I said. You can work with something like Sikkim. That's not something that happens very often unless you transform it into stuff, but it does do things. Also, it allows you to like play Capture Spirit and play Poke multiple times in a turn and actually benefit off of having convert draw into something that this character has a hard time doing. Like I said, usually the energy is the limitation. This is not interfering with that. So a decent common card, but not something I want if I'm allowed to just block fights. It is very desperation pick. So I think we're going to throw this into C tier amongst the likes of Drain Power. Just needs a little bit of work to actually become good. When it is good, you know, if it's dealing 12 damage, that's really, really solid. If you have the relic that blocks whenever Osti attacks, also pretty solid, just like kind of a mini Iron Wave. There's a lot of things that can allow you to pick this, but generally just not super great. Okay, Eradicate. X cost, retain, attack, deal 11 damage X times. Necro can often have big energy burst turns. This is going to be quite solid, works really, really well with lethality, and allows you to sort of hold it until it actually kills. The nice thing is it is going to kill very often, especially with the upgrade. This is doing a lot of damage. So this is essentially just Reap, but better in like every way, except maybe if you have exactly Friendship. But you can do a lot, especially with like a Bard's Hum or something. I think this is just going into like A tier. This is solving early game, essentially. I'm going to dock it a little bit because it's a rare, and usually you don't see it until end of Act 1, and Act 1 is where it's really popping off. But I've had, again, this thing with like lethality prep time just be my entire solve for the run. Not that that's happening too often, but any multiplication on this just gets really strong. With Reaper form as well, it's going to give you a payoff to actually apply a lot of Doom. And when you apply like multiple instances of Doom, that can proc something like Shroud multiple times, and that can be very strong as well. So yeah, just really, really solid pick early game. I think this just gets in very frequently. Once you don't need to solve damage anymore, or the front loaded damage is not good for you, then don't pick it. But outside of that, it's just in the deck every time. Next up, Seance, 1 energy, skill, ethereal, transform a card in your draw pile into soul. This is slow scaling in a way that you essentially just exhaust down your deck. In theory, works really well against something like the Aeon Glass because you can get rid of Withers. In practice, feels like it lines up less often than that, and it very much needs the upgrade. When this costs 1 energy, it's just not able to be played most of the time. It kind of just needs to cost 0, and that's what the upgrade does. So if it comes green, like let's say you have Toxic Egg, you see it in Act 1, sure, fine. It's a ethereal card, it procs like Banshee's Cry discount, and that's something that you can think about, something that you can think about for Spirit of Ash, whatever. There's a few interactions with it that I do care about, but for the most part, I think this card is like way fallen off since the last one. They nerfed it to cost 1. So yeah, probably just C tier. I will give a shout to dealing with the Soulfish inside of Act 1. If you are a deck that deals damage very slowly, you need to stabilize that fight somehow, and dealing with a couple of these statuses can help allow you to block and go longer in that fight. But yeah, it's like acceleration in a way that's not super exciting, especially when it costs 1 energy. It's like delayed draw for 1 and like exhaust down. It's just like whatever. A little awkward, yeah. Next up, delay, 2 energy, gain 11 block, next turn gain 1 energy. This upgrade is insane. The block number goes up and the energy goes up. That's just disgusting. This is very, very easily one of the best block cards to see early, and one of the things that allows you to outpace. And also, again, Necro wants this energy so badly to play powers. This upgrade is very, very good. The upgrade is insanely good. If you get this card, please upgrade it. This is just going into S tier easily for me. It's a little bit worse in this patch than it was like last patch because Aeon Glass and you need to go a little bit faster or whatever, but like it works with Danse Macabre. It works with so much. Having extra energy for your Eradicate, whatever. Having extra energy to just play your powers, having extra energy to dump into your soul draw. You can think about so many things that having extra energy allows you to do, like a really big turn, have a really big pop-off turn with Oblivion or whatever, play 1,000,000 cards, that sort of thing. Have a big turn with Dredge, right? You can just start thinking about all the things you can do with extra energy on this character, and stuff gets really busted really quickly. It's the best effect you have alongside of generating energy as well, is just generating block, because it allows you to buy time until you get the access to energy next turn. Okay. Next up, Pagestorm, 1 energy power. Whenever you draw an ethereal card, draw 1 card. This works with statuses that are ethereal, so notably the B guy in Act 2, having dazes, this will draw. That's really strong. The upgrade is also very powerful, going to 0 energy if you have anything like Game Piece, and this is upgraded. That's just free draw, essentially, while you play your power. Really strong with something like Permafrost. So, quite good. I think this is slightly worse than it was in the last tier list. Just how I play the game now, it's slightly worse, but I do think it's still S tier. Again, having passive draw like this on this character is what you want. You don't want to be paying energy for your draw. You just want all the cards in your hand to be able to do your combos. And that is bumping Pagestorm up a lot from these like active draw cards that exist otherwise. Like Pagestorm is a very, very powerful effect when you can use it. And a lot of good Necro cards, Lethality, Defy, just have Ethereal stapled onto them. You can also make Ethereal cards. Let's say you have Call of the Void, you play an Ethereal card, you redraw it next cycle, well, it's still Ethereal, and you just draw extra. That's really great. You will see this upgraded enough and also have the ability to put the upgrade on enough, and that alone is just kind of giving free draw throughout fights. Just really, really solid card. Don't think I have to explain why free draw is good. Okay, Blight Strike, 1 energy, deal 8 damage, apply Doom equal to the damage dealt. This works really, really nicely with Lethality because you're scaling this kind of like twice, right? You're getting double value. You're getting more Doom and you're also getting more damage. Pretty nice early game common in that case, but usually not very good. Like a card that raw just says deal damage on it on this character is worse than you might think. Again, you're bricking your block output, and that's kind of all you want to do in the early game on this character is just make sure you can overblock. Every damage card you're adding is really not contributing to that. Your damage can come from Unleash, and you just don't need this. If you are super desperate, or like I mentioned before, you have like Lethality or something, and you have like no other damage in early game, I'm not sad to pick this, but it's definitely not like one of the premium options that I'm like looking for when I'm trying to solve damage on this character. So I think it's just like top of C tier for me. If it's along the same lines of like Drain Power and Poke, where I'm sort of picking them inside of early game to solve a very specific problem, and outside of that problem, they never get picked at all. Okay. Next, we have Soulstorm. 1 energy, deal 9 damage, deals 2 additional damage for each soul in your exhaust pile. Like I said earlier, souls are a lot worse on this patch. I'm not often just trying to go crazy with generating a ton of souls, because Aeon Glass does punish that quite hard, and Dorito punishes that as well. So this card just gets worse in proxy. It's not even that good before this. I think it just takes a really long time to get going. I've had decks that have like huge dirges and make a lot of souls with like Capture Spirit or whatever, and this never seems to do more than like 30 or 40. If you get to that point, you probably already won the fight, and that's kind of the issue. I think this is just like very easily just like D tier. Maybe you have a Capture Spirit, you pick it early, but like maybe C. I'm not really sure, but being a rare, it's kind of quite rough. I think maybe just like bottom of C or something. Okay. Necro Mastery, 2 energy power, summon 5. When Aussie loses HP, all enemies lose that much HP as well. The number on this is not that great, and you also need Aussie to actually have HP to lose in order to deal damage. So it's not blocking that much the turn you play it, which is kind of the main gripe I have with this thing. And also just like not actually doing enough in the fight as well. Like it's kind of just terrible Reflect. And Reflect is a really, really good card, but yeah, Necro Mastery just not solid at all. As a rare, I don't love this thing at all. It has some use cases. Again, if you see this end of Act 1 and you have no solution for Act 2 multi-enemy fights, it's probably in the deck. So I'm not going to throw it in D tier, but it's pretty bad. Maybe around Devour Life level. I don't love this. Next up, Haunt. 1 energy. Whenever you play a soul, a random enemy loses 6 HP. So I did say that souls got worse, but I do think if you have 1 Capture Spirit, then Haunt is doing a lot of damage. And that does happen. I think Capture Spirit is probably the best soul generating card on the character, and just gets in even if you're not having any soul synergies at all. Like inside of early game, it's just like 1 energy, deal a little bit of damage, and add like 3 draw to the deck. I like that effect enough. I think that I'm bumping this up from the last one from C to probably B here. The upgrade's quite solid, especially if something like that. If you know that this turns into 24 damage deck cycle, it's probably pretty good. It can be better as well if you have relics that work with this, if you just have power synergy stuff. Again, I've already named those a lot, so I'm not going to keep naming them. But yeah, I think we throw this in B. You need some stuff to make it work. I think I underrated it last time. It did get worse from last patch, but again, I think I just did not rate this highly enough. It does more than you might expect. If you have specifically Capture Spirit, you have Dredge, whatever. You sort of need these things, but if you do, it's better. Maybe drop it below Shroud. I think Shroud is probably working more often than this thing, but it is doing enough and solving a problem enough that it's worth picking. You just need some synergies in the deck already. I don't think I'm raw picking Haunt as speculation. Okay, next up, Cleanse. 1 energy, summon 3, exhaust 1 card from your draw pile. This is kind of like Seance. I would argue that Seance is sometimes just worse than this. The summon is quite nice as a card in general. Like, having this effect attached is just quite good because it basically just says block on it. And yeah, Necro just loves block more than it likes playing an ethereal card. So I think that this is generally more powerful than Seance, even ignoring rarities, and then talking about rarities as well, it's probably just more powerful. I'm going to put this above Seance. I still think it's C tier. I think this is just overrated actually solving like the Aeon Glass problem, which is what you're trying to do. You just need to go faster. This doesn't always line up, especially in the first deck cycle, and Aeon Glass is not doing anything. It's just stopping you from doing what you need to be doing. That is just drawing through your deck and playing your powers, essentially. It's just -1 draw, right? Obviously, you can play it to exhaust 1 card, but how often are you even wanting to play it? Not that often, right? So don't love this at all. I think it's a little bit of a noob trap, but can let you play long and Soulfish. That is like the one thing I've really picked it for. Again, Act 1 is where Necro has a lot of the pressure in the run, and I think the end game, usually if you can figure out Aeon Glass and draft around that the whole run, then you're kind of okay. Cleanse is just not contributing too much to the end game and pretty infrequently contributing to the early game. Next, we have Reave. 1 energy, deal 9 damage, add a soul into your draw pile. This is essentially like Grave Warden, just the damage version. And, well, that's a lot worse. Block is just a much better effect on this character than dealing damage like this. Like, the soul itself is just not really that significant. I'd rather just not draw this card in the first place, not have to play it, and then I'm essentially just the same amount of draw if I just skip the card, right? Is the 9 damage really worth it? Is the soul synergy worth it? Probably not. You're not usually having that much soul synergy stuff. If you are picking this to open haunts, it's not doing enough. You really need Capture Spirit for that. So yeah, I think this is just easily C tier. This is like below a lot of this other garbage here. We'll see. Okay. Transfigure. Okay. 1 cost skill, add replay to a card in your hand. It costs an extra energy, exhaust. This works really, really well at solving a few problems that Necro has. So one is that in long fights, you need a lot of extra output sometimes to outscale the enemy. So even early game, putting replay on a defend or something is going to make it a lot stronger, and you're going to win a long fight. In the end game, putting this on something like No Escape or Hang, even Deathbringer, or something that you might not consider as like a super powerful replay, just sort of wins the fight on its own. Really, really powerful. I think this is easily just like B tier. Not something you always want to pick in early game, and it's getting docked a little bit because it's a rare card, but quite strong. Usually this is just like an endgame solve, and again, that's something that we have to think about a lot now with Aeon Glass in the game. You sort of need this top end output. So I think we throw this like above No Escape, maybe just like very top of B. I don't think I've really ever needed to upgrade this too much. I don't think I ever have really. Maybe I've upgraded like once, but yeah, it's not that important of an upgrade. Okay, next up, Spur. 1 energy, skill, retain, summon 3, Austie heals 5 HP. This is probably a card I've changed my opinion on a lot. Zeknar talked a lot about this idea of using Spur, just because it's an overstated card. Especially with Upgrade and having Retain on it, when you can play this for its full value, as in Austie actually heals the full HP, this essentially reads Summon 8. And Summon 8 is a very strong card. Bodyguard with Upgrade is 7, and that is a card that was like really, really powerful that we like warp the entire run around. If Spur is getting value, it is essentially just better Bodyguard and has Retain on it. And yeah, that is extremely good. The upgrade is very solid. I think it goes 5 and 7. So I got 12. 12 summon, even more absurd than that. The one caveat is that you do actually need Aussie to have enough HP and live a hit, which I did talk about earlier being relatively difficult to do. There's a few cards that make that a lot easier, namely a rare card that we'll get to later, but having a lot of HP, and maybe Dredge, I guess, as well, but having a lot of HP on Austie is very strong because it scales unleash damage. So this is really converting into damage as well, and it's pretty easy to play because of the Retain. On a turn that the enemy is like not attacking you, you can play this, and you're sort of scaling for the rest of the fight. It lets you stabilize fights where you are maybe only slightly above curve and struggle at dealing damage. So I think there's a definite use case for this. This is probably just going in like top of B for me. I don't think I'm quite on like the A tier for this yet. Maybe that will change over time, but I've gone up on it quite a bit. I think it's still a little niche. I'm not like raw picking it in Act 1 with like no additional help or synergies at all. Maybe we'll get to that. I'm going to keep playing with it and see, but so far it's performed better than I thought it would. Okay, next up, Spirit of Ash, 1 energy power. Whenever you play an ethereal card, gain 4 block. Very, very powerful block engine, especially if you're relying on something like Defy, which is a very, very good card. And you have something like Call of the Void, right? So there's a couple of like really, really strong synergy pieces with this. if you have like 2 ethereal cards, turning this into just 8 block a deck cycle is very good and can often be way more than that, right? So I think Spirit of Ash is still just S tier for me, probably towards the bottom. It's harder to get to work than I really like sometimes, but it's often worth playing around. And if you have Defies, which you usually do since it's a common card, probably pretty good. I do think you need like multiple copies of it, but it can be something I pick speculatively inside of early game, and I've never really been punished for it yet. So until that happens, it's going to stay up here. Maybe it loses S tier status at some point, but right now, bottom of S tier seems fine. Okay, next up, Capture Spirit, 1 energy skill. Enemy loses 3 HP, add 3 souls into your draw pile. Like I was saying earlier, I think this is just the best soul generating card in the game. Very cheap energy cost that you can actually afford to play, and really is just like the best draw on this character. Like I said earlier, Necro just doesn't like playing active draw, and like trying to draw into your powers after you've already spent energy on like a parse or something just doesn't work out that well. You just don't have energy to support stuff. When your draw costs 0 on the turn you're trying to do that, stick to your powers, it's a lot better. And obviously has a lot of cool synergies with like Haunts and the other soul payoff stuff. It can also do some cool stuff with like Eidolon or something that we'll get to. But yeah, this is still just S tier for me. I think this card is, even though it's punished by Dorito and even though it's punished by Aeon you can just not play it in those fights and it's going to be really strong in the others. I think often it's still worth playing inside of Aeon especially. Don't sleep on this. I think it's still very, very powerful for what it does. It is still just draw on this character that really struggles to find draw that synergizes well with it. And it's one of the few ones that actually does. So yeah. Next up, Defy. Talked about this a lot. Skill, Ethereal, gain 6 block, apply 1 weak. The Ethereal keyword here is really important. It can be a downside, but most of the time is complete upside and just works really well with the entire character's kit and all the synergies that exist on it with the Ethereal cards. Like I just mentioned that the power can make this block just like 10 or whatever. This is just an insane card. Weakness is often just blocking for like 10, 15. When the enemy's hitting you for like 40 to 60 damage a turn, then this is just blocking for 15 to 20. And that's an absurd number. So I think it's not really hard to understand when you just turn this into how much is actually blocking. 1 energy block 20 is a very good card. It's also artifact strip, which is very important a lot of times for either dealing damage or getting other weak sources down, and it's kind of cheap to do that. And also has the best effect alongside of artifact strip, which is just blocking, since usually if you're stripping artifact, it means you cannot kill the enemy that turn. You're spending energy on not playing damage. So yeah, easily S tier still, even after nerfs. Just ridiculous, ridiculous card. I think Enfeebling Touch is still like more powerful in general. It isn't uncommon, but yeah, Defy is just disgusting. Really, really good. Okay, next up, Parse. 1 energy, skill, Ethereal, draw 3 cards. Maybe a hot take. I think this is like really bad. You need a lot of energy, and it's still just one of the really clunky draw cards that you're not going to ever really pick. I don't think I've picked this like in a couple patches now. I transformed into this once, or picked it maybe after I transformed into Banshee's Cry. I think that was it. Other than that, it never really gets in the deck, like, ever. Maybe we need to bump some stuff down to D tier to make this make sense, but I think this is just, like, bottom of C tier. You can pick it. Like, if you have excess energy, it can be picked, but how are you getting the excess energy? I don't really know. And how do you not have something better to do with the excess energy? I also don't know. I'd rather just have Capture Spirit, like, almost always. Just really, really strange on this character, just the way it operates. But it is a 1-cost draw 3. It cannot be literally unpickable, but just the way that it works is just not great on this character. Active draw is just generally not very good. Okay, next up, Sentry Mode. 2 energy, power. At the start of your turn, add 1 Sweeping Gaze into your hand. Necro really just wants to be able to spend all your energy on block. This is essentially a card that says you spend energy 1 turn to play it, and then from then on, you can play all your energy on block and you'll win the fight. This works with Calcify because Sweeping Gaze is an Osti attack, and does some cool things with some relics like that. It's just not super great. It's random targeted damage, but it is like damage over time, and that is not something I can really say is super terrible on Necro. I've gone up a little bit on this since last time. I still don't pick it very often, but I think it deserves to be B tier. It's good enough. I think we put this like above Scythe. It should get in the deck fairly often instead of Act 1, just to allow you to not have problems with some of these fights that will outpace you, like, say, the Statue or the Frog Parasite or whatever, right? It's pretty solid in that way. Other than that, once your damage is solid, I never want it. It's a very dense card. Like, 1 card that solves damage is generally going to be a pretty good card. Even if it's, like, not good in a lot of fights, in the fights that it is good in, it's like allowing you to not pick a bunch of other cards. Normally you need like 3 or 4 cards to solve this issue, and now I solve it with 1. Okay. Next up, we have Wisp. 0 energy, gain 1 energy, exhaust. So this is excess energy that you can get to help play your powers. I used to really hate this card, and maybe I would have put it into D tier. But I do think that Necro has a need for this, and I've seen it upgraded enough, and it just gets in the deck randomly that I don't think I'm going to put this in D. Probably just going into C tier. I really don't love this thing, but when you need energy, you need energy, and it's just good enough. You're going to know when this is needed. I would say don't overpick this, and definitely like early game, don't just slam this with no additional need. You need something that's demanding of energy. Like otherwise, I'd rather just be not bricking myself. I need to draw into block. If it becomes green, much better. It allows you to just like play a power. When draw is not the main concern and it's the energy limitations, you'll know based on just playing the deck how often that is. Okay, next up, Squeeze. 3 energy, attack. Aussie deals 25 damage. Deals 5 initial damage for all of your other Aussie attacks. Really fun clone target. I've had this before when I transform into it. Not very often that this is doing more than like 35, I would say. That's usually the average case, is like 35 to 40. It can be a big attack. If you see it early, it's just going to be like a reap kind of that doesn't retain, which is a notable downside. But it's like a big enough thing that you can like pick it early and it's going to feel fine. I think it just only really gets in if you see it super early and usually you want to solve damage in some other way. It's pretty difficult to play. If you have like Danse Macabre and stuff, it can do stuff. It's just not enough. And I'm not going to load up my whole deck on a bunch of Austie attacks. Like I'm never trying to load up my deck on attacks. Does work with Sentry Mode in a cool way, just not really all that great. I think this is just like C tier. It's probably like middle of the road here. It's a rare card. It's getting bumped down a lot for that, but yeah, not great. Next up, Domain, or Demesne if you're based. Power, ethereal, 3 costs. At the start of your turn, gain 1 energy and draw 1 additional card. This upgrades to cost 2 energy, which is a very important upgrade. Getting these powers into play, again, is very difficult on Necro, and something that I care about doing a lot. So this upgrade is super high priority. This effect is obviously incredibly broken. Like, extra energy is what you want, extra draw is what you want, and it's not active either. You play it, like, and then the next turn is just always going to be good. Every single turn after it's going to be good, just single-handedly, like, solves the fight. This is just easily S tier. Arguably one of the best cards in the character, maybe the best. I think Friendship, you could go either way on this. Neurosurge, like, these are all insane cards, but this is, like, just absolutely solving fights when you play it. It just worth it every single time. Duping this, disgusting. Like a dupe pot on this just wins the fight immediately. Yeah, never not just slamming this and picking it. I feel like there are very few situations where I don't add this to the deck. It's almost 100% pick rate unless I've like already won. And at that point, well, you don't need to care about this list anymore. Okay, next up, Calcify. 1 energy, Aussie's attacks deal 4 additional damage. I do think I slept on this card a little bit last time. Play with it a little bit more. Had like poke with this before after transforms. Even with just like 1 additional Aussie attack, if you have literally just, one fetch, this is going to be enough to allow you to pick it, and it's going to perform. Again, Necro early game is the scariest part. This is performing its best inside of early game by quite a lot. And if you're able to like loop fetch, let's say you have like fetch, calcify, capture spirit, you can play multiple fetches a turn and sort of cycle that as like your main damage. That feels really good when you can do it. Lets you turn like 0 cost attacks into actual damage output that's going to be significant. Not super frequent that it gets in. You kind of need these conditional things, but when it does get in, it's pretty powerful. So I think we're putting this in like middle of B tier here. Yeah, definitely slept on this on release. And I think it's been, I don't know how long since I made the last Necro tier list, but close to release at least. And my opinions on this have shifted quite a bit. Okay, time's up. 2 cost, attack, deal damage equal to the enemy's doom, exhaust. Funnily enough, I think this is a card I would have put in D tier, but the existence of Aeon just really makes you need to have something like this sometimes. It's not a premium option for solving. If you have like Reaper form, this is disgusting because you deal damage equal to the enemy's doom. So you're like scaling off of your Reaper form before. And then because it deals damage in actual damage and not in doom, your Reaper form procs and then doubles that. So it kind of just kills the fight. Like if you have Reaper form times up and like a little bit of doom to get started, the bosses just die. It does like that one thing exactly. In your hallways, it's not doing like anything and it's kind of expensive, but it's really powerful if you just need to kill the enemy and you have like very slow damage. That is one of the main ways this character dies now. So I'm going to put this at like bottom of B. It's pretty situational, but when it is needed, it's like the one thing that saves your run. There's like other ways to make it work, right? Lethality is pretty sick with this, just a big attack. Replay is cool with this. Like there's a lot of things that are really, really making this like pop off super hard. It's just a little bit of work to get it started. Okay. Next up, Putrefy, 1 energy skill, apply 2 weak, apply 2 vulnerable, exhaust. Debuffs are broken. I'm not going to really talk about this very much. This is just an S tier very clearly. The upgrade's very good, 3 weak, 3 vuln. Please put weakness on the enemy. It blocks 1,000,000. We already went over that with Defy. I'm not going to talk about that much more. But yeah, just really, really good. Okay. Banshee's Cry, 9 energy, attack, deal 33 damage to all enemies, costs 2 less for each ethereal card played this combat. This got changed since the last time I made this list. It used to cost, I believe, 6. Now it costs 9, and the upgrade, instead of increasing damage, makes it go to 7 instead. This is a card that if you have like 2 or 3 ethereal cards, can play in second cycle, and third cycle like guaranteed, basically. When you struggle so much for AoE damage and also just for scaling damage, this is doing way too much. Like, once you've got blocked down in a fight, made it through your first deck cycle, is going to solve damage for you and works really well with lethality. Like, just having any like big attack to play is super good. I think this is easy S tier. Even after nerfs, it's still really powerful. I don't think it's like quite at the top. You need a little bit of work to make this work, but it is worth playing around. It's just a disgusting amount of output when you actually get it to work, but it's just not hard to get it to work because you have like these really broken Enfeebling Touch Defy things that all say ethereal on them. And you even have stuff like lethality that works really well that also says ethereal on it for some reason. Not really sure why. There's just a lot of cards that are just entering the deck on site no matter what. And that makes it really easy to pick Banshee's Cry. And that in itself is just very, very powerful. Okay, next up, Death March. 1 energy, deal 8 damage, deals 4 additional damage for each card drawn during your turn. This did get a buff since last time, so I think it's gone up a bit. If you have a Capture Spirit, this can be popping off and doing more, can be doing stuff early game, but I think it's just too much work to really get higher tier placement than C. I think this is very easily just going to be in like sort of middle of road C tier. It's not a rare card, so we can put it maybe above Squeeze or like Blight Strike or something, but yeah, definitely needs a little bit to function. Okay. Veil Piercer, 1 energy attack, deal 10 damage. The next ethereal card you play costs 0. This can make your domain discounted to 0, which is really cool. Most of the time, I think there's better ways to generate energy. Can often just be 10 damage, and that's about it for 0 energy, right? Like if you discount a Defy to 0, this essentially just reads 0 energy on it. Unfortunately, there's better things to do than that. I mean, you can have like Poke deal 10 damage with Calcify or whatever, and we can say that that's like similar to this, but it just needs a little bit more like hoops to jump through. And after you play your ethereal cards, doesn't really do anything. If you let them exhaust, doesn't do anything. If you don't have that many ethereal cards, can not really do that much. There's a couple cool interactions. I think off of Transform, I'm not like sad to have it, but I can't really imagine myself like picking it very often. It can do funny stuff with Demand. I'm not going to put it in D tier. It's just going towards like bottom of C probably. We'll get to some D tier stuff and maybe I'll move some stuff down, but yeah. Defile, 1 energy, ethereal, deal 13 damage. The ethereal keyword is pretty core here. It matters a lot. This is a very high damage number and upgrades to 17, which is a very big number. Unfortunately, again, raw damage on this character is just not very good. It can be something you need to pick instead of early game, especially Overgrowth, but that's about the only exception. I will put it in like bottom of B. I think it's a step above these other damage commons and easier to pick and works with the ethereal stuff. And you can just let it exhaust when you don't want it later. So it's sort of similar to these like retain cards that just get out of the way. But I think the other retain cards are just better most of the time. Like retain is a stronger keyword than ethereal, basically always. It looks so insane. If you put this on like a different character, like if Clad gets this, holy crap, you know? But on Necro specifically, it just doesn't end up being all that good. Okay, Reanimate, 3 energy, summon 20, exhaust. This is a card I was mentioning earlier about just having a big Osty. Works really well with the upgraded Osty attack from your Ancient in Act 2. The upgrade's quite strong as well, goes to like 25, right? Very powerful effect. This is not just 20 block, it is 20 barricade block and also scales damage. So if you can play like Unleash after this, well, congrats, you just played a card that says block 20, deal 20. It retains block as well. This is just S tier, like one of the main enablers, I think, for having a super big Osty, for sure. If you get Shrimp, that's insane. Duping this is insane. Can like single-handedly solve a fight. Just so much output in one card. If you just think about this as just blocking 20, it doesn't look as good, but when you start thinking about the context of what summon actually is, in terms of damage and also retaining block, it gets a lot better. So this card is just basically in almost always, unless you are not really doing anything with the summon or don't have the energy economy to play it for whatever reason. Okay, Negative Pulse. 1 energy, gain 5 block, apply 17 to all enemies. I think I've come down on this card a little bit since release. I think it's still just like a sort of solid answer to some AoE fights with like a little bit of help. Like if you have like a Negative Pulse and so, or maybe you have like a power that works with the Doom, it can get a little bit better. If you have Nimble on this because you have Fresnel Lens, definitely gets in, but it's not super exciting. I think it's just a damage common with some extra synergies. It's probably going like around Defile, probably a little bit above it. But yeah, not too much to talk about here. It's doing enough, but the block is not super significant on it. You do like having just any block card in this character, but it's not nearly as good as some of the other stuff above it. Call of the Void. 1 energy power at the start of your turn, add 1 random card into your hand. It gains Ethereal. A huge activator for Banshee's Cry, makes it basically just always going to play. And also card generation is just really strong, especially when the bad cards it does generate don't clog your deck ever. Like that's not really a thought for most of the card generation stuff. Like I'm not thinking about that when I'm playing that on Regen or something, but it is a nice benefit. And Ethereal does have keyword synergies, right? You have a lot of powers that work with this. This essentially just wins the fight on its own. 1 card solved for like block and output and damage. And it's just like, what is this card meant? It's ridiculous. I don't know if I'm going to put it over Neurosurge. It feels a little crazy, but this is just a disgusting card. I played co-op with Opum yesterday, and this is his entire deck. It's just 1 Call of the Void, and yet his deck doesn't do anything else. It's just Call of the Void. That's it. And that's still enough. Really good dupe target. Kind of can think about it like draw without having to play any energy into it on like an active draw turn or whatever. Like you don't have to play it like Parse. You play it once, and then for the rest of the fight, it's just giving you more options to play every single turn. Makes your energy generation better, your domain, your friendships, whatever. Your Neurosurge can even generate energy for you in general. That's just really, really powerful. Okay, next up we have Right Hand Hand. 0 energy, attack. Aussie deals 4 damage. Whenever you play a card that costs 2 energy or more, return this hand from the discard pile. This is kind of weird. If you are looping like 2-cost stuff, let's say you have like maybe a delay in the deck, you have like one other thing. If you have like 2 cards, that is something that you can do with this. Like it's not super exciting. It can also work in the package of like Calcify from Transforms a lot better. I think you definitely need some synergy with this. I don't really want to pick this before I have any synergy. It's not good enough. The damage number is just not good enough with it to really warrant picking it. But I think it has some uses, and I probably have more uses for this than like Blight Strike. I'm going to put this like top of C. It's just not as cool. Really awkward with Borrowed Time too, because it increases the cost of this, so you can't even do like Borrowed Time into this and then have it pop off. Just kind of gross. Okay, Afterlife, 1 energy, skill, summon 6 exhaust. I initially didn't think this card was that good, but I also think I undervalued like how good making a big Ostia actually was. Like I knew it was strong, but I think there's like very degenerate things you can do with it, and Zeknar sort of proved that. The upgrade on this is quite powerful. I think it goes to 9, I want to say. Regardless of just getting like really high amounts of value on Osti is very strong. This turns into damage, right? You have to remember every time you see the word summon, it says damage and block on it. Very often, if you are above curve on Necro, you are blocking the full turn and have excess energy to spend, and this lets you make progress later as well. So Afterlife is quite powerful when it comes to scaling into the end game as well, and gets out of the way if it's not super good. It's just hard for this card to be like super bad. If you know what your deck is doing and you're just trying to draw into specific powers, then I don't really care about this at all. But later on in the run, if you need to scale damage into like Aeon, or you need to scale damage into Test Subject or whatever, this can be really, really powerful because it just carries over your damage throughout the rest of the fight, right? If you can overblock and need to scale damage, you're not just like waiting for your Osti to get big anymore. You're making it big, and then your Unleash is doing more, works with stuff like lethality and scaling into that as well. So I think this is like bottom of A tier now. Much better than I thought it was, for sure. Early game kind of just gets picked. You can think of it just like a block card that does more stuff later. Okay, next up, Rattle. 1 energy, attack. Aussie deals 7 damage. Hits an additional time for each other time he has attacked this turn. This card's very awkward. Works well with Fetch. And if I transform into something like an Aussie attack, or I transform into this, it makes some packages easier. But it has this issue of like needing a critical mass of Aussie attacks in the deck before it becomes good. And I don't really want to pick like a ton of those things speculatively, right? So I just need some stuff already for this to actually go off. It needs a transform basically in order to like really justify picking it, or needs like the perfect pieces to align where you already have like the fetch and you already have like a poke and you already have calcify or whatever. At that point though, sometimes it's just not even good to pick because then I'm just diluting out my block too much. So it can be very strange. I think this is just like top of C tier, probably better than right hand. I think most of the time, maybe not, but it's pretty comparable, these two things. So I don't feel bad either way. If you want to say that one is better than the other, I don't think it really matters too much. Okay, next up, Snap. 1 energy, also deals 7 damage. Add Retain to a card in your hand. Zach has been doing some testing / propaganda with this, talking about Eidolon plus Snap. I'm not really a huge believer in that idea. I do think that the one thing this card does is if you are unable to scale in a boss, you can snap your bad cards into your hand, like your strikes or your defends, whatever it is, and just never play them. So you can essentially just like exhaust slowly, treat this sort of like exhaust, and get down to a point where you're just playing your good cards every turn and then actually outpace the boss. Like if you have a Grave Warden and that's your best block card, now I get to loop Grave Warden and not play my crappy defense or whatever it is. It does get you to a point where you can beat a boss. It's just really slow and kind of annoying to do that. So this is probably just C tier. It does have more utility, I think, than some of these other like desperate picks. Like I've used this a while ago to solve like Soulfish before, but yeah, not really the best way to do it, I don't think. It's very, very awkward and usually just not very good. Okay, next up, Fear. Attack, Ethereal, deal 7 damage, apply 1 vulnerable. Debuffs are good. Ethereal is good. You might think that that makes this card good. I literally never picked this thing. This is D tier. First D tier of this tier list, but yeah, this is quite awkward. The damage number is just not good enough, and I just don't care about the vulnerable keyword as much as I care about weak keyword on this character. It's really just bricking you most of the time and just doesn't have enough applications to actually do anything later. I think it's just really bad. Like, I don't really ever see a case where I'm picking this. Like, if I'm desperate for like artifact strip in some way, I'm just picking something else, right? I don't often care about Vuln and like playing Fear and then doing something on the same turn with the vulnerable. Like, I'm just not doing that. I'm not playing that many attacks on this character. So I need it to at least read like 2 Vuln on it before I even consider it. And that's just like not ever happening. Yeah, and it's not the ethereal card I want to pick to make like Banshee's Cry work either. Like, just super awkward. Way too much energy for this effect on this character. Okay, Sculpting Strike. 1 energy, deal 9 damage, add ethereal to a card in your hand. This is essentially just Snap with like extra synergies with Strike Dummy, I guess. Similar function. Overall, this is kind of just ass. I think it's worse probably than Snap. You can't even really play the card if you want it to exhaust, which oftentimes you're wanting to do. Like, you can put ethereal on a card in your hand and then play it for like some synergy later with like Banshee's Cry, but all the synergies that require you to like play an ethereal card, whatever, this is like the worst activator for it. You just want to pick ethereal cards, and ethereal cards are just like already good most of the time. It can desperation solve a boss, like thin down your deck to some sort of loop. Again, there's like some really weird use case for that. We can throw it among these like ultra desperate picks here. Just only having damage. Ugh, gross. It really doesn't do anything else besides that most of the time. Okay, Misery. 0 energy, deal 7 damage, apply any debuffs on the enemy to all other enemies. It's a 0 energy attack. I think one of the main problems here is this is not an Austie attack, so it doesn't work with a lot of the synergy packages and really doesn't work with something like Friendship or Shared Fate, right? So those two things alone knock this card. The fact that it's also rare and just not that impactful, especially in the hard fights for this character. Like, a lot of the hard fights, if you are able to spread debuffs to them, it's like, I already played my Deathbringer in the Roaches. Do I really need to play this card now? I already won, right? What am I really trying to spread? Like, I have like maybe Defy into Misery, but that is living in Disneyland to line that up. I think most of the time it's just not good enough, and being a rare is quite sad here. It's just not doing anything at all in any of the boss fights that actually matter and actually kill you, and you don't need it for the multi-enemy fights either. Just really sad card. I don't know when I picked this. Maybe early game I'm like super desperate for damage. It just has 0 cost attack on it, and it just gets picked. Like, it does do that job. And we talked about how being able to do block and damage at the same time on this character is important. So I don't think I'm putting this in D tier, but it's pretty freaking close to it. A lot of the C tier ordering, maybe I don't care so much about. Like, these cards are just like not really ever picked or extremely niche. And maybe honestly, I just bump Soulstorm down. I think this card is just worse. It's bad enough. Like, I don't think this is ever really doing that much damage. So yeah, probably like just bump this down for now and not care about it. Okay, back to an actual good card. Sleight of Flesh. 2 energy, power. Whenever you apply debuff to the enemy, they take 9 damage. Very easily, just S tier. This is one of the best cards in the character. So many cards on Necro work twice with this. Also, like, works with Reaper form in a really disgusting way. Works with Putrefy twice. Works with Deathbringer twice. It works with Shared Fate. Like, just so many silly interactions that just don't need to work with this. Work with this. It works with Hang. Whether or not that you care about that, I don't know. But yeah, just really silly card. One of the things that actually is allowing you to scale damage into endgame as well. That is, again, one of the few problems that this character has. It's like very early in the game and like the last boss. Everything else in between is usually not a really big problem. So Sleight of Flesh, really strong at all the bosses. Any long fight, this is really powerful. The Elite's really powerful. Lets you farm to actually get value for endgame. Having Relic support is going to make your run a lot easier, and Sleight of Flesh is a card that just lets you sort of run in if you have any sort of debuffs at all. Turns all your block cards into damage, which again, blocking while doing damage, very important in this character. If I play Defy and now it suddenly just does damage, that's kind of gross. So yeah, very, very, very powerful card. Kind of just gets clicked on the site. Even if I have no debuffs in the deck, sometimes I will click it unless I'm literally dying. It is like one of the main things I'm trying to greed. So try basically clicking this on the site, and if you die for it, then click it less. But for the most part, you should be clicking this like every time you see it, unless you are basically solved already. Okay, pull from below. 1 energy, attack, deal 5 damage for each ethereal card played this combat. This scales a lot better than Soulstorm, and is also not a rare card. There's also a lot more ways that you play a lot of ethereal cards, like I have a Call of the Void, right? And now suddenly this is like my main damage. I can like play this once for like 50, play it again, and it's going to do like 70, whatever. Maybe I play it multiple times. It can be a late game damage solve. It feels pretty similar to Time's Up for me, where in old patches, I just didn't need to scale like this or scale fast enough. But it is one thing that like can do that. And because of the ceiling, I think we're putting it next to it. So I'm just going to throw this in B tier here. Pretty important to just realize that the context of the game has changed a lot when I'm evaluating these things. And while these cards are bad in a lot of situations, the fact that they are like 1 card solves for like the hardest fight in the game is very important to remember. Okay. Next, we have Grave Blast. 1 energy, deal 4 damage, put a card from your discard pile into your hand, exhaust. D tier. I know a lot of people like this card. I think most of the top players just hate it. I think everyone on the podcast agrees it's like one of the worst cards in the class. So if you think this card is really good, I really urge you to reevaluate it. I don't think it's even remotely close to being considerable in like the vast majority of situations. Dredge is just a million times better than this. It's basically paying 1 energy to draw, and it's conditional draw on having already drawn the card that I want to pull back. And the damage is essentially just no damage, right? It essentially just is 1 energy, pull, 1 draw, right? Like, that's just not good. I already don't love Hologram that much for similar reasons, but Hologram's effect of actually blocking is 1, better, and 2, a lot better on Defect, who has like a 0 cost package that actually cares about and like a lot more energy or like turbos or pulling back statuses to line up combos. Like, Necro doesn't have that stuff. So Grave Blast is just like usually slowing you down from drawing into the card that you want in the first place. You're kind of living in fantasy land if you're relying on Grave Blast to like pull back certain things. It usually is just breaking your consistency, not helping it, and that's like what people pick the card for. It's just that it's not actually doing what you think it's doing. It's really just making it worse. The functionality of it is just not actually achieving what it's set out to do, which is, you know, don't pick the card, basically. Just never pick this thing. I can't really think of very many interactions where I want this. Upgraded, it's not really doing anything. I think it might even be worse because it doesn't exhaust. Just disgusting. Really, really disgusting. Not in a good way. Okay, Dirge. X cost. Summon 3 X times, add X souls into your draw pile, exhaust. I'm not putting this in D tier. Sorry, I just needed to have the thing up to read it. This is pretty easy, just going into S tier. Dirge essentially says block and draw at the same time. And also is doing the thing that, 1, it says summon on it, so it's better than block. 2, it works with some of the soul stuff. That's not really important. 3, it replays sometimes with cards in a really nice way, or works really well with borrowed time when you gain a bunch of energy because you don't care about the +1 cost. It doesn't do anything to this. Dirge has just a lot of synergies that make this very good, and is one of the main ways you get a big Austie, and also just accelerates you into your very important stuff. If you have like History Course or something, completely broken. If you shrimp this, completely broken. Lots of ways this card is really disgusting. Any potions that pull it back or play it multiple times, whatever. Just gross card. There's a few Souls cards that are just, don't think about them for really being Souls cards. They have like some additional stuff because of that. But for the most part, just turn this into, hey, it says block and draw on it. That's a very good effect. And it also draws next turn, which is much better than drawing on the turn that you dump all your energy, right? Like if you're dumping all your energy, you don't want to draw on that turn, you want to draw later. And it lets you just line up a combo basically the next turn and just always win. The upgrade's very strong. It upgrades to Summon 4 and Souls Plus, which means they draw 3. Really powerful card. Even after the exhaust nerf, it used to not exhaust, which was just degenerate and would go infinite like every single run. That is no longer the case, but still in your first deck cycle, really disgusting. Necro really likes to dump excess energy into stuff. Have very dense cards, works with Danse Macabre, works with Intimidating Helm, works with like a million different things. Yeah, it just gross. Okay. Next, Sikkim, 1 energy, Aussie deals 5 damage. Whenever Aussie hits the enemy this turn, summon 3. This recently got a buff, like just recently. So definitely moving up from last time. And can work with like the fetch, calcify sort of package. Again, I think it's not often that you're getting into that package. Usually it requires some sort of transform into those things. Or to have fetch early. Those are really the main things that are going to make this better. When it does work, it's really just saying that you're like blocking for playing attacks. I'm not a super huge believer in this. I do think the summon keyword is just really good, and going from 2 to 3 summon on this was very big. 50% increase on the most important keyword on the entire card is really strong. Also works with multiple copies of it. I've seen like clones of Sikkim do some stuff. Like you play Sikkim like 4 or 5 times a turn, and that's doing some stuff. I don't think it's insane or anything. I know Open's like a big believer in this card. I'm not quite that big of a believer. I think it's like top of C tier probably. It does some stuff, but yeah, not usually. It's definitely escape the D tier mines, but not quite enough. Okay, high 5, 2 energy attack. Aussie deals 11 damage and applies 2 vulnerable to all enemies. This used to be D tier. I think it is moving out of that. 1, Danse Macabre is better. 2, this is an Aussie attack, which works with the calcify package that we just talked about and how that's a little bit better. 3, it says Vuln for 2 turns, which is notably way more impactful than 1 turn, because usually you play this, you don't have that much energy, and you play stuff on the next turn after. Also just AoE fights, so can be something that you pick early game to just get through. It does play really well in the fights that are just really terrifying for this character inside of early game. So I think we are moving this up to like bottom of B, maybe top of C, something like that. It's not insane, but has a lot of situations where it can be picked. It doesn't fall off too hard. There's just a lot of things that make this better and open it. And if you're really desperate for damage, it's something that like usually you can find some sort of synergy with it later that you're not going to cry that you have this in your deck. But yeah, 2 vulnerable, just way more important, just the way this character works. Like if I have Reap in my deck and a high 5 or whatever, I need to play high 5 and then I can't play Reap same turn. And I could not do that with the other Vuln card Fear or whatever that's in D tier right now. Like you can't play Fear into Reap, right? And that's a really big deal. I can, however, play high 5 into Reap. And that's also a big deal in the other direction, right? So being able to take advantage of the Vuln on a separate turn is really nice for this card. Okay, next up, Barry, 4 energy, deal 52 damage. This is essentially just never played. Unless you can put Snecko on this or you have Snecko already, that's kind of it. I'm putting this in D tier. I think the vast majority of the cases, 1, it's usually not often that you actually have Snecko in this game. Snecko is good on Necro, but inside of Act 1 is when you want this the most. If you have Snecko, it's going to be really good. If you transform into it and happen to get the Snecko enchantment, great for you. But yeah, usually not worth the effort to actually try and play. 4 energy is literally just a curse a lot of times. You literally cannot play it. So pretty awkward card. I think no one's really gonna misunderstand when I say that it's just like a once in a million kind of pickup. When it's really good, but it just doesn't happen often enough to put it out of D tier. Okay, Eidolon, 2 energy skill, exhaust your hand. If 9 cards were exhausted this way, gain 1 intangible. Zeknar again was doing some snap science with this to try and get it to work. I think this has one really important use now that it didn't before, and that is exhausting Withers and Aeon Glass. If you go in that fight without having any answer to Withers and you need to play it long, this is saving you. It's not very common. The upgrade is very important. It goes to 1 energy, but I don't want everyone to think that this is just as bad as it used to be, because it used to be really bad. I'm not really picking this for intangible. It can work, and that's why like Snap can be good with it, or like you have a bunch of souls. Like Necro does fill hand often enough for this to actually work, but it's really just that exhausting the cards in your hand can often be very powerful in this character, especially with Aeon Glass. And that was less true before, especially when we had better tools like Seance was unnerfed. to exhaust down. And we didn't really have as many impactful statuses in the end game that we cared about getting rid of. If your deck's damage is lacking, you might need something like this. I would say that you often don't, but if your deck is slow, this can be an answer to Aeon Glass. And anything that is like an answer to Aeon Glass is not going to be D tier. So I think, again, this is sort of desperate. Basically, the bottom of B tier here is just desperate Aeon Glass solutions. But that is often enough. I think we'll throw it like underneath Pull from Below here. You'll see that a lot of these cards that like in a vacuum or against not Aeon Glass are pretty bad, but then against that one specific fight just gets so much better. And the fact that that is like the one fight that is the most threatening in the entire game by a large margin just means you spend the entire run building around it. I'll briefly scroll through this list now that we're done placing everything here. Just kind of valuable to recognize that the context of the game has changed a lot. You really need to prepare for one fight in particular and worry about the specific problem points that Necro has in a run. So yeah, this is the updated tier list now. I think a slight snapshot for maybe this patch on how Aeon Glass is going to be for this main branch patch. I assume that after this 2-month period or whatever, that this will become very outdated, as was the last one. But this is like very warped around one specific enemy in the game. And if that changes at all, this is going to completely change. So if you're watching this way down the line and Aeon Glass is no longer the giga threat that it is right now, then I will say take this with a big grain of salt. And a lot of these thoughts are very warped around that one fight in particular. So if you're going to say that a lot of these are very strange placements, I urge you to just think about that fight and contextualize how Necro dies in the game, because it dies to really just two things, the early game and that one fight in particular. So yeah. Okay, thanks for watching. That's it for YouTube. See ya.